Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. A lot of people have been asking me, H, what is the largest holding in your portfolio? It's a question that a lot of people have on their minds when they think about other investors, and this is something that I like to look at within super investors portfolios and anybody respected in the community. I like to think, what's their highest conviction stock? Today, the time has come that I'm going to reveal that, and I'm going to give you this information about a particular business that I have an extremely high degree of conviction in, and I think could be a once in a generation investment opportunity. The market cap is currently $3.5 billion, and I think that if this company continues to play their cards right, they could surpass 100 billion in market cap in the long term. That's nearly a 30x on where the shares are currently at. Now, that's not hyperbole. I have an extremely strong degree of conviction in this company, but I also wouldn't say that without saying and reiterating the point. This video is not financial advice. This company is not for the average person. This is for educational purposes only, and you need to invest responsibly given your circumstances. I'm somebody who has been investing for a long time, full time for 5 years. I understand investing very well compared to the average person, and I've got a lot of both emotional and financial resources to take these kind of risks and make these kind of bets. And I know that some people watching don't, so you need to invest responsibly. And also, this is going to be a very long, comprehensive analysis. It's just going to be the first video. I'll try not to make it 2 hours, but this is going to be a comprehensive analysis. And in order to really make big bets on companies, you have to have a high degree of conviction in what they do. So I throw my chips down on the table. It's very important to understand what I'm saying. Also, this investment, it's got a really high degree of volatility. In fact, look at this. You can see the share price over the last 6 months. Compared to the S&P in purple and the NASDAQ in red, this stock is extremely volatile. Some of you may have seen the little ticker watermark in the back there. The stock that I'm talking about is Hims & Hers Health. So yes, let me just reiterate, I've got a very high degree of conviction in this company, but I do not want anybody to go away and invest on my behalf because it takes a lot of effort, and the conviction that you build up helps you to weather these stormy seas. You notice the share price has had some 40-50% drops, and actually understanding the company helps you to be a good sailor on rough waters. I first started buying this stock in November 2023. I bought a lot at $8 a share, and since then, as it's been dipping, I've been increasing my position. A good way to summarize Hims in layman's terms is they're trying to disrupt the legacy US healthcare industry. Here is a map of the world. Now, all of the countries in green have nationalized healthcare services. That's true for my country, the United Kingdom. I've never lived or been a resident of the United States, so I don't have personal experience, thankfully, whenever I've been on holiday, no accidents, of the US healthcare industry. In red, these are all the countries that don't have a public health system. And what you'll notice from this map is the US is pretty much the only developed country without a public healthcare system. So if you're not from the United States, I'm going to go through a lot of things about the US healthcare system that if you're American, you may know, and if you're not American, you probably don't know. So Hims are trying to disrupt this, and they're trying to disrupt this through three main pillars. There's three broad categories we're going to go over here. The first is the convenience. So bringing the healthcare into the 21st century, because it's a very backward system that's very big and very bureaucratic and very slow. The second is trying to basically cut out the US insurance industry, which has all of these middlemen and comes with a whole load of inflated costs and problems for the consumer. And then the third is one of making people feel good about health again. Providing a sort of customer-centric experience, which whenever it comes to healthcare, even in a country with a public health system, is typically not there. You don't enjoy going to the doctors, you don't enjoy being treated. Hospitals are typically, as much as the staff are good, they're typically stressful places to be. Getting a GP surgery appointment or a primary care appointment in the States is a very difficult thing to do. These are the pillars that Hims are attacking. Okay, the first pillar of disruption, convenience. Let's describe the conventional experience of healthcare. So let's say you've got a problem with yourself. The first step is to find a doctor. Now, a lot of Americans, particularly the younger generation, which is actually HIMSS target market, they don't have a doctor that they're on a first name basis with. They don't go to the doctors very often. You know, in this day and age, everyone is moving around so much. Most people don't have a doctor that they're actually on that first name basis with. So you've got to find a doctor. You've got to book a consultation with a doctor. Then you've got to drive to that primary care facility to go and see the doctor. You've got to wait in a room. Then you've got to finally see the doctor. It's probably going to be some rushed 10 to 15 minute consultation. Then you may need to be referred to a specialist, which may take a really long time. So then you may need to drive back, or maybe you need to go to a different facility, speak to a specialist about your condition. And then in certain cases, and this is the bit that HIMSS targeting, that specialist will write you a prescription for something. And then you need to find a pharmacy that has that prescription. You need to wait for it to get in stock. And then you need to go to that pharmacy, wait in a line, show them your prescription, pick up the prescription, and then drive home and finally the process is done. But it's a very long, convoluted process, and HIMSS is basically disrupting that with a direct to consumer model. So it's basically like e-commerce, but for healthcare. So you can go online, you've got this nice platform where you can speak to a licensed physician remotely, and this is the bit about insurance that I'll get onto in a minute, they can operate a complete direct-to-consumer model. So HIMSS have got their own pharmacies, they've got their compounding warehouses and their affiliated pharmacies that effectively ship drugs straight to your door, right? Instead of having to go through all of this process, you can talk to a doctor, they can say, yes, this person is eligible for this, and the drugs go straight to your door. And it makes it so much easier, particularly, you know, a Gen Z or millennial who is used to doing every other industry they use is online. The healthcare industry is so far behind that. And I understand the healthcare industry, there's a disproportionate consumption from the elderly population, but actually, you know, there are younger people that need certain types of medications where they, you know, the system isn't going to cut the mustard to them, particularly if they're working 9 to 5, you know, and it's extremely difficult to get doctor's appointments on the weekend or to negotiate time off work to get to the doctor's appointment. It's just something that's very disruptive. So this is the first pillar that HIMSS are attacking. I should mention here quickly that obviously for some conditions, particularly if a physical exam is required, obviously you need to go to a doctor's office. HIMSS are disrupting the US healthcare industry for certain types of conditions. It is estimated that 70% of primary care appointments, they actually could have been done completely remotely, not face to face. So if there's no, you know, physical exam that's required, which is true for many conditions, then you can do this completely remotely, and it is 10 times more convenient and enjoyable for the end consumer. It's also worth noting that whilst this conventional process is very costly for the consumer, particularly in time value, it also is in monetary value. You know, the healthcare industry is extremely messy, with layers and layers of management, and you've got huge physical buildings that all need to be maintained. And effectively, by doing a direct-to-consumer model, this has been rapidly cut down. And by doing a direct-to-consumer model, HIMSS is massively keeping costs down. It's much cheaper to have a quick video chat with a doctor than it is driving to a physical building, and actually all of the costs of maintaining that building and all of the staff and all of the admin in that big legacy system, those huge costs that come with that are no longer passed to the end consumer. The second pillar of disruption is against the health insurance industry. Now, whilst health insurance is certainly required for some things, like for example, if I needed to have a triple bypass on my heart, that is not something that I would want to be paying for 100% out of pocket. But the conventional model is most Americans have health insurance, and most of the Americans that do have health insurance obtain health insurance through their employer. Their employer pays for most of that premium, and then the employee pays for some. And that's effectively how it works. And then if you have a condition or if you need to use the doctor, then effectively you're covered. But the problem is that you're not typically covered 100%, and there is not transparent costing within the US healthcare system, and a lot of the time costs are overinflated, and it ends up just being a big, huge mess. Now, watch this video by Infographic and you'll see what I mean about the lack of transparency within the US healthcare system, And there's also links back to the point on costs I made earlier, where it's like the conventional healthcare industry is not incentivized to change or streamline itself because of this consistent issue where hospitals are effectively allowed to charge whatever they like. Some of that bill goes to the insurance company, but a lot of that gets passed on to the end consumer. Take a look.
Another thing we're told is that 1 in 10 Americans delay getting treated because they're worried about the cost. That's what you might call a vicious cycle, because waiting can just make things worse. Some folks can't even afford the deductible, even when it's just $500. The bills themselves may often surprise those that got treated. According to a story in The Atlantic in 2014, one man had a herniated disc surgery in America. He made sure he had enough cash for the surgery. As the article said, $56,000 in hospital charge, the $4,300 anesthesiologist bill, and the $133,000 fee for the orthopedist. But there was an extra $117,000 for an assistant surgeon that had turned up. One would think at these prices you could walk out of the hospital not only fixed, but in a Hugo Boss suit, with the keys to a new car and 2 tickets to the next World Cup final. But no, you get fixed and leave with only a big bill. This is mainly because of administrative costs, the sometimes ridiculous cost of drugs, the fact that you pay for the possibility of doctors being sued, paying healthcare workers wages, new technologies, and medical institutions just charging you what they want. We're told by Reader's Digest that some hospitals charge $8 for a mucus recovery system. They're usually called tissues. An investigation revealed one patient was charged $53 per pair of non-sterile rubber gloves. Sterile gloves were more. Total cost for the stay just in gloves was $5,141. That plastic cup they use to hand you your drugs, $10. With an average of $440 in cups for a patient's stay in the hospital. Alcohol swabs, of which you may need many, $23 a time. One person was charged $137 for an IV bag. The cost of that bag, $1. This is mostly due to something called the Charge Master, which allows hospitals to charge out-of-this-world prices. These codex of costs are hospital-specific, meaning each hospital makes up its own prices. Some critics have called such costs fiction and are critical of the lack of transparency hospitals provide about this hidden menu. The loser, of course, is the consumer, whose life may depend on that 5-star menu. Vox reports that one woman who hit her head and went to the ER left with only an ice pack and a bandage. Her bill? $5,751. Her insurance paid $862, and she had to pay $4,989.
Okay, so you can see from this video that the pricing is a massive mess. The insurance costs are not particularly transparent, and this is a massive issue in the healthcare industry. There's something called a deductible, which most Americans have heard of and most non-Americans have not. And this is effectively the excess that you would need to pay, or the amount you would need to pay before the insurance starts covering you. Now, this deductible figure has risen steadily from 2010 at $917 a year to 2023 at $1,735 a year. Meaning, if I had a health condition and I needed to use my insurance, I would need to pay 100% out of pocket $1,735 on average, and it resets every year, before my health insurance would even start covering me. And even when you're employed in a great employer program, the deductible is almost always the responsibility of the employee. So there are a lot of things going on at the same time here. You can see that, going to hospital and dealing with hospitals is not a particularly pleasant experience for Americans because it's inconvenient and extremely costly. The end of the market that HIMSS are trying to disrupt are the same types of conditions that could easily be sorted without that face-to-face consultation that I mentioned earlier. So they started with erectile dysfunction and expanded into other areas of sexual health. They've got mental health sections, so anxiety and depression, dermatology, so hair loss, acne, aging, and they've also got a weight loss section, which has very much been in the news this year. I'll go more into detail with why they've chosen these particular products as well. But what I'll say is for now is you can understand that these kinds of things, they don't typically require in-person consultations, and everything can be sourced remotely in that direct-to-consumer model that I mentioned earlier with a licensed professional. So going back to the US health insurance industry, most people obtain health insurance through their employer, but most people have to pay at least some premium towards that. So the employer covers most of it, but most employers do not cover all of it. A lot of people have to pay around 20% of that total premium. As soon as you start consuming your healthcare, you have to pay an average deductible of $1,700 a year before your insurance even starts covering you. Now, there's another issue at play here. Let's imagine you would obtain one of the treatments that HIMSS does through conventional means. Let's talk about erectile dysfunction, for example. If you try to obtain this sort of medication through your health insurance program, costs end up being massively inflated. When HIMSS is selling erectile dysfunction medication, they are selling the generic version of the drug and rebranding it. When you go through your conventional healthcare plan, you effectively will get expensive branded versions of the drug, like Pfizer's Viagra, because the health insurance industry is inflating costs and Pfizer wants to keep selling this branded drug, the drug that they created, at a premium, even though the patents have since expired.
You might think the process that determines how much you pay for something is pretty straightforward. And it often is. For example, here's the supply chain for a beverage you might buy at the drugstore, say a Pepsi. PepsiCo manufactures the soda and sends it to a retailer who sells it to a customer. The customer pays the retailer and the retailer pays PepsiCo. Simple, right? Well, that is not the case for the products behind the pharmacy counter, the drugs. Here's a typical supply chain for prescription drugs. It looks really different. That's because the way that drugs are priced is not at all a straightforward process. Experts and politicians argue that the very complexity of this chain is part of why drug prices have grown so high for customers.
Everyone involved in the broken system, the drug makers, insurance companies, distributors, pharmacy benefit managers, and many others contribute to the problem.
To understand this debate, first you should understand the flow of drugs and money within this chain. Let's start here, with the pharmaceutical companies. They're the ones who develop a drug and set a price, known as the list price. This isn't as straightforward as it might look, which we'll explain in a moment. Next, you have the wholesalers who transport the drugs and sell them to the pharmacies. The patient pays the copay, and the pharmacy sends out a bill that gets paid by the insurance company. That's simple enough, but we're missing a link, the link that manages this transaction and adds a lot of complexity to the chain. Meet the pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs. They're who the drug companies and some politicians are talking about when they refer to middlemen. They work for insurance companies, big employers, and government agencies. And a big part of their job is to bring down the cost of drugs for their employers. They do this by negotiating with pharmaceutical companies for rebates. Yep, for many of the drugs a pharmaceutical company sells, it pays a rebate to the PBM. The PBM sometimes pockets a portion of the rebate and passes another portion on to the insurance company or employer. Why the pharmaceutical company pays these rebates is the source of a lot of controversy. What happens is the drug company gets moved up on something called a formulary. So, what's a formulary? It's the list of drugs that the insurance company covers, and it's grouped in tiers. Each tier represents what portion of the list price the patient pays and what portion of the list price the insurance company pays. The highest tier in the formulary is the lowest copay for the patient, and the lowest tier is the highest copay for the patient. When the pharmaceutical company pays a higher rebate, the PBM will move the drug up on the formulary. Pharmaceutical companies want high placement on the formulary. That's because patients are more likely to take the drug that's most affordable, and that usually means higher sales for the pharmaceutical company. If a patient wants to take a drug that's lower down on the formulary, or not on it at all, they have to pay higher copays, or even the full list price of the drug. If this seems confusing, that's because it is. Let's take another walk through that transaction, this time with an example. Say a hypothetical drug costs $100. A PBM negotiates a $50 rebate, $10 of which they pocket, and $40 of which they pass on to the insurance company or employer. In return for that rebate, the PBM moves the drug to a better spot on the formulary, making it cheaper for the patient to buy the drug. This transaction is important because the pharmaceutical companies say it's a big reason they keep raising the price of drugs. You've probably seen a chart like this before. It's the rise in the price of a drug in the US, in this case, Humalog, according to its maker, Eli Lilly. The pharmaceutical companies say they have to raise list prices to protect their sales and profits from the demands of these higher rebates. Here's the CEO of the pharmaceutical company Merck at a hearing on drug prices.
If you bring a product to the market with a low list price in this system, you get punished financially and you get no uptake because everyone in the supply chain makes money as a result of a higher list price.
And here's that Humalog chart again, this time with the net price, or the average revenue that Eli Lilly says they take in under this system.
So as you can see, the drug industry in the States is one big convoluted mess. You've got the original pharmaceutical company here, you've got the end consumer over here, and you've got all of these middlemen, the insurance companies, the pharmacy benefit managers, taking huge cuts as it goes on. And let's just have a look at this chart. Like, this chart is unbelievable. So you've got the list price in blue, and then you've actually got the net revenue, just the revenue that went back to Eli Lilly for Humalog. So the list price has gone up by over 50% in just 4 years, from $391 to $594. That's crazy. Yeah, that's pretty much a 50% increase. But the actual net revenue that Eli Lilly actually get back for that drug, it's not even flat, it's gone down by $12 a pop. That's crazy. So you can see here, the big issue, let me reiterate it from the video. You've got the formulary, right? And you've got all of these pharmaceutical companies competing to get to the top of that formulary. In order for them to get to the top of the formulary, and therefore for the doctor and the patient to choose that drug to be selected and consumed, they need to effectively pay more rebates to PBMs. So the PBMs are benefiting from higher drug prices. The pharmaceutical companies basically need to create higher drug prices in order for the PBMs to be incentivized to put them at the top of the formulary so that the PBMs can get higher rebates. Isn't that nuts? It's absolutely nuts. And this is what I mean when HIMSS bypasses insurance. They say, instead of going through this whole insurance industry with basically this massive $400 plus gap being taken by all of these middlemen, forget your insurance, you're going to go direct to consumer, and for these particular products, you won't have to worry about paying any middlemen, you'll just pay for the cost of a drug. And it's going to be much cheaper. And guess what as well? You've still got that deductible. So if you're somebody younger who maybe just has one or two small health conditions like erectile dysfunction, hair loss, depression, these kind of things, you're going to be $1,700 out of pocket before you even start with these stupidly high drug prices in the conventional, convoluted, time-consuming system. So for example, the average online revenue per subscriber for HIMSS at the moment is $57, right? And let's assume that that is only for one drug, which is actually conservative because some people on HIMSS are already using the service for two different things. But $57 a month is $684 a year. But the average deductible that you would pay out of pocket in America is already $1,700. But these drug prices are so expensive that $1,700 might not even cover what you would get for HIMSS for $600 on a direct-to-consumer model because of how hiked up the drug prices are because of such a messy supply chain. So there you have it. We talk about convenience, we talk about the insurance industry and how HIMSS are disrupting these two. But I also talked about feeling good, having a positive experience from healthcare. Now, a lot of that linked into the fact that the conventional healthcare system is so archaic. But take another look at these products, right? Take another look at the products that Hims are offering. These types of products, erectile dysfunction, hair loss, anxiety, depression, what do they all have in common? They are also conditions that people will be embarrassed by, particularly for the sexual health category. Imagine for a man, he's got a problem in the sexual area. He has to physically go and drive to a doctor, talk about that face-to-face in person, and then go to a pharmacy and speak to the person behind the counter and say, this is my problem, and come back with a big box that says Viagra. That's not a particularly enjoyable experience of healthcare, is it? This is what a Viagra box looks like. Hims, on the other hand, you can do that discreetly. You can fill in your online questionnaire. You can get your online remote health consultation, and you can get the medications shipped discreetly to your door. And it comes in whatever form you choose. Hims has multiple forms of medication in a nice box a lot of the time, without any of the nasty, small black writing. Hims, for example, for erectile dysfunction, they offer mints, so you can take it as a mint, and it just feels much better than, oh, I have this problem and I'm going to feel like a sick old man. Hims actually makes people feel good when improving their health condition, instead of, oh, I've got to drive to the pharmacy and then there's going to be a cute lady behind the counter and I've got to pick up my Viagra. It's not what people want to do. Their app is seamless and, quite frankly, very, very pleasant to use, particularly compared to conventional means. And that's not to say most doctors that I've dealt with, and I've not dealt with many doctors, are lovely, but it's just the stress of driving and waiting and nothing's ever on time, and parking the car and driving back, and the fact that the doctors are so stressed. That's another point as well. Doing remote health consultations is a massive benefit for doctors, right? It means that doctors, some of the people in our society that we need the most, but they're the most stressed, they can work remotely through Hims and be able to do their job properly with a clear head. Isn't that great? So Hims offer an amazing experience on their app. And it's not only how you take the medication that can be customized, but the actual medication is also customized. So, you can take medication for a month. This is very prominent with things like skincare and shampoo to remove hair loss and shampoo to reverse hair loss. And you can say, oh, this worked well for me. I have side effect X. And instead of being prescribed some one size fits all, which is never true because we all have different genetics as human beings, right? So instead of being prescribed some one size fits all branded, overly expensive medication where the pharmaceutical companies are making loads of money out of you, the health insurance companies are making so much money out of you, as are the private benefit managers, the pharmacies. Think about the cost of the pharmacies as well. There's tens of thousands of pharmacies all over America, all with bricks and mortar, right, in expensive areas in the city. And this is also another cost of your drugs. Because you need to physically go to this pharmacy, that cost is also passed on to the end consumer. And we don't need that in the 21st century when we have same-day shipping all across the country. Amazon was doing that 10 years ago. It's not something that's necessary anymore, but people are paying, you literally pay extra money to go all the way to the pharmacy to pick up drugs. Isn't that crazy? And, if you end up going to a pharmacy, if you work 9 to 5 and you end up going at the weekend, if they're even open at the weekend, then the pharmacy is exceptionally busy. So it's just another one of those issues that the Hims are solving. So a lot of the drugs are custom formulas. And what's really interesting about Hims, so they offer custom treatments to improve the individual experience of taking that medication. You take a conventional medication and it has 10 side effects. Maybe you take Hims medication, you get one of those 10 side effects. You can then go back to your doctor and you can say, oh, I'm having this side effect, and they can adjust the medication accordingly and work with you. And the beauty of Hims is the pricing is completely transparent. You know what you're going to pay for. You don't pay for the doctor's consultation. There's no hidden fees. There's no charging $8 for cups. There's no, big insurance companies or pharmacy benefit managers hiking up the drug prices. You just pay monthly for that end treatment, and it's going to be shipped straight to your door. You'll also notice that most of these conditions that Hims are talking about, they're ongoing conditions. So people would need the medication for like a long time. So that's a good recurring revenue stream for Hims. But also the amount of people on customized treatments is massively going up. Massively. So take a look at this graph. You can see the personalized treatments in green up 164% year on year. And once you get rid of, for this simple medication that you just needed a consultation with a doctor for, once you get rid of that archaic legacy healthcare system and you start getting direct to consumer, you can message your doctor on the app, shipped straight to your door, and it's personalized to you. Are you going to go back to the old system? No, you're not. So what Hims is doing is very clever. They've built a really, really fantastic brand. And people also ask about the network effect for this company. So in terms of network effects, there are actually a couple of things to mention here. The first thing is, with doctor and patient relationships. So the more doctors that work on Hims, the more it benefits the consumers because they can see the specialist that they need faster to get the approval for the drugs that they need. And the more patients that go through Hims, the more doctors want to work with Hims, depending on their specialty, because they just have more flexibility over, actually like talking to the correct person. And that's the thing with legacy healthcare, there may only be one or two specialists in your local area that you need to go and talk to. But with Hims, because it's all national, the chance of you being able to speak to a doctor so much quicker is so much higher. Because it's literally on a national scale because it's all remote. You see what I'm saying? There may be the person that you need to speak to in Columbus, Ohio, but you live in California. With Hims, it doesn't matter. There'll be all the specialists in Columbus, Ohio on Hims remotely that you can then speak to as an end consumer. So there's that network effect, but there's also a network effect of Hims are expanding their offerings really quickly. You can see here what they already offer, and you can see the sort of black and white boxes of what they are working on offering in the future. That product is expanding, and obviously the more products that they offer on here, that then there's network effects. The more it benefits more people to come onto the platform, and then they're generating more revenue so they can put work in to basically offer more products, which I think is absolutely genius. And with regards to the whole GLP-1 situation that's happened this year with weight loss, that's going to bring a whole host of people to the platform to then say, oh, I can, this is so easy. I'm not only going to get my weight loss through Hims, but I'm going to get my birth control through Hims as well, right? A lot of women take birth control, a lot of women. And on the topic of the weight loss, Hims is offering this entire weight loss package for significantly cheaper than the branded pharmaceutical companies that want to sell their branded medication that they worked on through the insurance industry, with insurance companies taking a cut and the pharmacy benefit managers taking a cut. Meanwhile, Hims, direct to consumer model, can sell it much cheaper, getting you used on the platform, and then they say, oh, I can work on getting my depression medication through Hims. I can work on getting my birth control medication through Hims. And then that's a network effect on there too. But I'd also say that building this network effects, they haven't got the absolute widest economic moat in the world. But I would say they don't need to. What they're doing is such a new way of doing it. And the old legacy system is so bad. It's the most backward industry in America, the most legacy industry in America, with so many unnecessary costs and so much unnecessary bureaucracy and just all of this weight slowing it down with not much incentive to change, right? Hims doesn't even need necessarily the widest economic moat, but I think that they're building one, certainly in brand. They've got a really good brand and they're much more respected than most of the legacy healthcare industry. They're really starting to build switching costs with customizable treatments, and they've got that network effect of offering more and more drugs and also having more patients and more doctors. So I did make what some could say the outrageous claim that this company, I think, could be a $100 billion company, and I've got a high degree of conviction for that. Let's just go back to these number of subscribers and let's think about the maths for a minute. So they're currently on just shy of 2 million subscribers. Let's call it 2 million subscribers, right? And I was saying that I think, again, let's round it up, the stock could be a 30x from here. So the market cap will be from 3.5 billion to just over 100 billion. In order for that to happen, let's say the valuation stays the same, and I'm chuckling because the valuation on this stock is so ridiculously cheap, and I'll show that to you in a little bit. So let's say that stays the same, the multiples stay the same, or the market cap per subscriber, if you like, and also the average revenue per subscriber stays the same. So all that would have to do is 30x to 60 million. And that's just in the States. 60 million people. There are way more than 60 million people in the States that have depression or erectile dysfunction or weight loss issues or diabetes or hair loss problems, or they want like help with anti-aging, whatever it happens to be. So many. So my point being, actually maybe 100 billion, we could say it could go way further than that. I'm just saying that is my long-term target for this company, that 28x return, because in order to get to 100 billion, they could either expand on their valuation, which I think they massively will. I'll show you the valuation shortly. Or they could increase their average revenue per subscriber, which, to be fair, they haven't done that much recently. The growth has mainly come from growth in subscribers. Or they could get to 60 million subscribers, or any combination of those three. Yeah, they increase their valuation by 3x, and if they increase this by 10x, without increasing the average revenue per subscriber, that is a $100 billion company. You see what I'm saying? I will say, they don't offer everything in terms of their products, but let me tell you this. The company was founded in 2017. Now, if you want to know anything about management, I would say that that is an amazing testament. To have this company founded in 2017, they're forecast to do 1.4 billion in revenue this year, just 7 years after they were founded. And that is absolutely amazing. Andrew Dudum, he's a young guy. He's the founder of the company, 35 years old, very smart man. And he owns about 12% of the company. So I'm happy with management overall, but the way I see that is like the proof is in the pudding. For them to found this company in 2017 and for them to already get to like over $1 billion run rate, forecast to be $1.4 billion by the end of the year, is absolutely incredible. Now, the revenue growth rate for HIMS is fast, very fast. And this is what I like to see. Good, consistent growth, quarter after quarter. Really, really fast growth. Now, as I mentioned, the monthly online revenue per subscriber is pretty much flat. Like, for the moment, they're mainly growing by number of customers, which is in line with their growth rate. What I would like to see in the long run, particularly as subscribers are using more than one product, is for that monthly online revenue per subscriber to also greatly increase. But I'm not worried about that not increasing because, as I said, there's only 2 million people that are currently using HIMS products, when actually the total addressable market for all those conditions is probably close to, 150 million, maybe even 200 million, just in the United States alone. Now, if you look at the revenue growth rate, this is another interesting thing that a lot of investors actually haven't spoken about. The revenue growth rate, the rate of deceleration is completely slowed down. So in September 2023, they did 56.5, then they did 47.5 for the full year, but then they did 45.8. And this is what HIMS said, is that excluding GLP-1, they would have grown 46% year on year for June of 2024. My point being, in Q1 of 2024, they grew 46%. In Q2 of 2024, they grew 46% excluding GLP-1. So the rate of deceleration is completely slowed down. So the revenue growth has gone 47, 46, 46. And it's holding the line at 46. And this has got nothing to do with GLP-1 because including GLP-1, the revenue growth was 52%. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. Like, so accelerated it by 6 points. And it's crazy because they announced that they were doing this whole GLP-1 thing in mid-May. And Q2 runs from April 1st to June 30th. So it was halfway through the quarter, they just got it ready. So it's only half a quarter's worth of growth, effectively. So you're seeing very fast growth, excluding GLP-1. And a lot of investors have been worried, like the shares have come back down again because, GLP-1, it may end for HIMS. HIMS is not about GLP-1. HIMS is about all of the things that I've talked about in this video. It's about all of them. And I loaded the boat again on shares because I'll tell you why. You can see in May, there was a dip in the share price. This was just before GLP-1 was announced. GLP-1 was announced in late May and the shares shot up from about $14 to about $20 pretty quickly. Now, the shares went back down in August, early September, and they're almost at the low before GLP-1. So a lot of those investors that were selling in August who are worried about GLP-1, right, they're going to push it down to a point where the shares are almost as low as where they were before Hims even said they were doing GLP-1. My point being is that, number one, the shares are almost at a point like back down to before they're doing GLP-1. So all of those GLP-1 investors seem to be like fleeing the nest, and it's silly to even think of GLP-1 as a Hims story because they grew 46% excluding GLP-1, which is the same rate that they've done for the last 2 quarters. And for a company growing this fast, for their revenue growth rate to stagnate, to stop declining because they were growing stupid at 88%, right? This company is doing now $1.4 billion by the end of this year. For them to hold the line of 46% revenue growth, excluding this short-term catalyst that they've got, is absolutely insane. And even if it's only a short-term catalyst to their growth, it's still amazing because it gives Hims a load of brand exposure. And it helps people see what else they could potentially get along the Hims platform. I'm sure most people who have issues with their weight also have at least one other health issue that Hims could potentially help with in a way that makes them feel 10 times better and is 10 times more convenient and is much cheaper than going through the legacy system. So even if Hims don't make a lot of money off GLP-1 because they're selling it for cheaper, it is a lot of exposure to their brand also. And let's talk about exposure for a minute, because the main reason that Hims haven't been profitable until now has been because of sales and marketing and investing in their brand. Their admin's not that high, their R&D is not that high, they're a very streamlined, efficient company in that regard, but their sales and marketing have been very high. That being said, they are starting to break even on a net profit basis, and for their full year, this will be their first full year of net profitability and free cash flow. So they're doing very well on that front. Now, what they say with regards to sales and marketing is they're investing in the brand now, and that's justified, this high sales and marketing spend, because they're literally growing their subscribers so quickly. You know, they're showing people what they can do. And actually the marketing spend as a percentage of revenue is going down. So if you go all the way back to Q2 of 2022, it was 53% of revenue, sales and marketing. This one is from their most recent quarter. So you can see that in June 2023, they were doing 107 million of marketing on 207 of revenue. That's 51%. But now they're doing 145 on 316 nearly. And that's only 46% of revenue. So the marketing has gone from 51% of revenue to 46% of revenue, and they're growing revenue much faster than expected. So this marketing spend is coming down, and the company's starting to break even on a bottom line basis. That being said as well, you can see how quick the payback period is on marketing. So let's take this example on the right, Q1 of 2023, they spend $84 on marketing. The first quarter, that same quarter, they already get 47 of payback. By the quarter after is 77. So they've pretty much broken even by, it's cumulative. It's cumulative. So by the next one, they've actually made over 100 million back from that 84 that they spend. So they've got a less than 1 year payback on sales and marketing, and the sales and marketing is justified given their products and their growth. They're basically grabbing the subscribers now, then they're selling them products, they've got switching costs, they've got this amazing network effects, they've got a huge improvement on the legacy industry. They just need to get subscribers in, and that's why they've got that high sales and marketing expense. It's also worth mentioning that, you know, for an early stage company, it's important to watch the balance sheet much more. The balance sheet is extremely healthy. You know, they're sitting on just over 100 million of cash, which I think is decent. You know, they can put that towards good investments. Total assets, 440 million. Liabilities, only 100 million. They've got virtually no borrowing, which is excellent, particularly now that they're, you know, bottom line net profitable, they're not really going to need to be spending much. Their share dilution is not particularly high. And actually, in the most recent quarter, they said they're buying back $100 million worth of shares. So that's about 3% of the market cap in the next 3 years, which I think is about appropriate. I wouldn't want HIMS to be buying back loads and loads and loads of its shares, because they can allocate the capital more effectively because they're a growth company. This is not what investors should be prioritizing in this early stage. They'll want to see the company reinvesting back into the business rather than buying back its shares. But they also said that they wanted to take advantage of where the share price is severely disconnected from fundamental value, meaning they think their shares are a steal, and therefore the ROI of buying back more shares now is much better than when the shares are high. So they're trying to take advantage of that opportunity to maximize returns for investors. So I see this as a massive positive. They're buying back some shares, they have conviction, they think the shares are cheap and disconnected, but they're also not going overboard, putting all of their resources into buying back shares, which is not what I want to see when the company is growing at this rate. Okay, so valuation. This is another point. I wouldn't have this much weighting in one stock if it also wasn't for the price. If HIMS was trading at the same expensive multiples as a lot of high quality companies in the market, I would have my portfolio a bit more spread out. I'm not saying that half of my net worth is in HIMS. I'm just saying I have an unusually large percentage of my own portfolio in HIMS compared to what I typically have. So DCF, very fast growth. These are analyst growth numbers for FY26. I've pulled it up from 21% to sort of 24% because I think analysts are being too conservative with the slowdown, particularly when HIMS actually has massive history of beating its guidance. This number that you see in FY25E, this says 1889.3. HIMS' original guidance for that, literally 6 months ago, was 1.2 billion. Then in Q4 of 2023, they said we're going to achieve our 1.2 billion target for FY25 1 year early. So then it turned out it's going to be in FY24. Then they increased their full year guidance again. And then they increased their full year guidance again to about 1.4 billion. So it went from 6 months ago being 1.2 billion in 2025 to 1.4 billion in 2024. So insane growth. And I just think that 20% growth for FY26 is a little bit too conservative, but I don't want to go crazy because I'm a HIMS bull. So I put 24% growth, and then thereafter going from 22 to 15. Free cash flow margins are already quite healthy. They actually did 5% margin last year. The analysts think they're going to get to almost 8% margin. And then I've got it gradually scaling up to 20% margin, which I think is appropriate because HIMS' long-term gross margin target is mid-70s. Their actual gross margins at the moment are in the low 80s, but they can probably keep it at the 70s in the long run. That's their goal. So I therefore think free cash flow margins of 20% is definitely appropriate, particularly considering as they have this rapid growth, they won't need to increase their spend on sales and marketing quite at the same rate. They just won't. So plugging that all in, they're net cash positive. So there's a slight $24.4 million tailwind on there. And it's coming out with a fair value of 14 billion already when the stock is 3.5 billion in market cap. So number of shares, and we're getting a present value of $65, where actually the current share price is 16. So that's a 4x, which is pretty crazy. That's insane upside. And I don't even think the numbers in here, given what we're seeing historically, I don't think the numbers in here are particularly overly optimistic. That's what you want to see when you're investing, a really wide margin of safety. Here we have some valuation comparisons. So compared to companies at similar market caps, growing at similar rates, I believe I put 3-year forecasted annualized turnover of at least 25%. And what you notice, if you look towards the right-hand side of this table, you can see that HIMS on all of these metrics for this growth, and I know it says 3-year forecast annualized turnover of 37.8, but they're about to grow 60% year on year. So remember, a lot of these multiples, particularly the gross profit ones, because gross margins are stable, this will be 60% lower next year. That's 4.7 on enterprise value to gross profit with stable gross margins. Forecast EV/EBITDA of 21. Forecast price to free cash flow of just 30, with not nearly optimized margins. Forecast PE of 28, with not nearly optimized margins. And you notice, like, even at this level, even at this market cap, the company's growing, you know, at similar rates. With some sort of stability, you just can't really find anyone else in the table, apart from Shift4, that I'm actually close to making an investment on as well, who's actually really got this growth for this price. So my point being is, like, there are other undervalued names here. There are other companies that I quite like on here, but I'm just showing you that, like, even at this market cap, this company is very undervalued, and HIMS shouldn't even be at this market cap. They could be double this market cap. They could have a market cap way closer, you know, to for example, Tempus AI or Sentinel-1, and still they'd be undervalued. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So my point being, HIMS is a very interesting company doing big things, making big waves, trying to disrupt many prongs of the US healthcare industry. Convenience, insurance, and also just making people feel good about their own healthcare. Many people will ask, like, why is the valuation still so low? A few reasons being is that I think institutions have not caught on to this yet. Part of that is because, you know, the market cap is still quite low, so it's just not naturally going to have a lot of, like, really big institutional money in it at this level. I also think because it went public via a SPAC is a big issue, or a big reason why a lot of people aren't touching it with a 10-foot barge pole. Now, it's a general rule of thumb that if a company went public via a SPAC, it's probably garbage, and that's not the case with HIMS. You know, instead of just being a pipe dream, they actually exceeded their SPAC targets. And I also think that now they're proving sustained growth. The GLP-1 thing has really sort of put them on the news and put them on the map quite a lot, but the cat is just not out of the bag, you know? Tesla's cat got out of the bag in 2019, 2020. Palantir's cat got out of the bag in 2023, 2024. HIMS's cat is not out of the bag. And I think when it will, there'll be a sharp correction in this valuation. Maybe a double, maybe a 3x, and then longer term, I have ambition for this company to do incredibly well and make it to a $100 billion market cap. As I said, please don't trust me. Please do your own research. And I'm saying this as well, like I'm betting my life on the company. I'm really not. You know, I've got a lot of diversified investments. This is a significant percentage of one of my investment portfolios. I've got other investment portfolios. I've got private investments. I've got investments in precious metals. I've got property investments. I've got all kinds of different investments. So HIMS as a percentage of my net worth is not stupidly high. It's really not. I'm just giving you the facts, the moat, the disruption, the management, the opportunity they've got ahead, and the fact that they're trading at such reasonable prices all contributes to why I've got so much money invested in this company. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll catch you for the next one.